Okay guys, starting this section 1.4 where we're going to deal with absolute value equations, the first thing I thought that will be really important to understand this type of equations is what's the meaning of absolute value and what I have to understand or what I need to understand whenever I solve absolute value equations, right? So, brief review of what the concept of absolute value is. Remember that whenever you apply this operator or this characteristic mathematical operation is that whatever is inside the absolute value operator will give you in return, will yield the positive value of it. No matter whether it is a positive or a negative value, as soon as you apply it, you will get a positive value. So, certain things to take into account about this. First thing I want you to see is how we understand absolute value in a graph. So, we can take this into account. Imagine that you are standing on a number line and we use a 0 as our point of reference. If you were standing, let's say 6 feet away from 0, we are going to count how many feet or, for example, how many steps you need to take to go from your position, which is 6 feet away from it, or 6 steps away from it, until you get to 0. So you will have to walk 6 steps. So whenever we think about absolute value, we think about the distance in steps or units to go from the number you're standing on till you go to 0. So, how many steps are there from 6 to 0? Well, I'm counting 6 steps. Now, in the same way, if you're standing at -6 and imagine that you are there, how many steps are you going to take to go from -6 to 0? Same thing. Even though you're standing on the negative side of it, you're still counting steps, which means that it's a positive value. So you go from -6 to 0, you also count 6 steps. So that is why whenever you apply absolute value, you will always get positive in return. So that begs the question, is it possible that at a certain point, if you apply the absolute value for any given value, is it possible that it gives, for example, -1? Well, here's the thing. Remember, absolute value always returns positive values. So it's not possible. It's not possible that whenever you apply absolute value to anything, it gives you a negative number in return. That's not possible. So here we are opening the possibilities that just as we did in section 1.3, there are situations where you have no solutions to your equations, and take that into account. Well, one last thing to take into account for this concept of absolute value equations. Look, let's say that I am looking for a number. I don't know the number. I don't know it. But if I use the absolute value of that, I will have the result of 5. So think about it. What numbers could satisfy that criteria? That's the point. What number or numbers could satisfy that criterion? So I know that whatever I put here will return a positive. So what are the possibilities that I get a 5 applying absolute value? Well, I can think of, if I do absolute value of 5, I will get a 5. But also, if I do absolute value of -5, I will also get a 5. So this case is one case in where we are open to see more than one solution. In this case, the solution to this equation, for example, is that x equals 5, and there is another solution, x equals -5. In the next videos, I'm going to show you how to deal with this important concept. Okay? So that's all for now.